everybody. I hope you're having a wonderful week. I'm going to say, guys, the story I'm going to read this week is so good. It might make me cry, just to warn you. I might get a little emotional, but I think it's such a wonderful story and has such a wonderful, wonderful lesson in it. So I just have to share it with you guys. This book is called The Invisible Boy, and it is written by Trudy Ludwig with illustrations by Patrice Barton. And this is about a boy who... he's not really invisible, like, like a movie like The Invisible Man where we can, he's there but we can't see him. Or like, oh, in Harry Potter, right, he wears the invisibility cloak and then no one can see him. No, he's not really invisible. It's just nobody's noticing him. And I'm hoping, after I read the story, that you might try to notice people who maybe in the past were invisible, okay? You'll understand when I'm done. All right, so this is The Invisible Boy. Can you see Brian, the invisible boy? Even Mrs. Carlotti has trouble noticing him in her classroom. She's too busy dealing with Nathan and Sophie. All right, we see all the children here in color, and then we see Brian is all in black and white. And the teacher, it's not that she's trying to ignore Brian, it's just that she's often busy with the kids that are misbehaving or talking when they're not supposed to. So remember what I said, Brian's not actually invisible, it's just that no one's noticing him. Nathan has problems with what Miss Carlotti calls volume control. He uses his outdoor voice inside too much. Sophie whines and complains when she doesn't get her way. Nathan and Sophie take up a lot of space. Brian doesn't. When the bell rings for recess, Micah and JT take turns choosing kids for their kickball teams. The best players get picked first. Then the best friends of the best players. Then the friends of the best friends. Only Brian is left, still waiting and hoping. JT glances in Brian's direction and just as quickly looks away. We've got enough players for each team, he tells the others. Let's play ball. And we see Brian has been left out. In the cafeteria, Madison and her friends talk all about her birthday party. The rope swing over the pool was awesome, says JT. Yeah, so was the water slide, adds Fiona. That was the best pool party ever. I'm so glad you guys had fun, says Madison. Everyone did, except Brian. He wasn't invited. Now, boys and girls, how would you feel if you were Brian? If you were at a table at lunchtime and all the kids are talking about this fun party and you knew that you weren't invited. That's a really, really hard thing, my friends. I really feel bad for Brian right now. At choosing time, while the other kids play board games and read, Brian sits at his table, doing what he loves to do best. He draws fire-breathing dragons scaling tall buildings. And we see here's a dragon and here's a guy with a marshmallow and he says, "Thank you for toasting my marshmallow." And he draws space aliens locked in intergalactic battle and greedy pirates digging for treasure. Arr! Yay! And superheroes with the power to make friends wherever they go. And here we see Brian as a superhero and he says, "Hi!" And then this other kid says, "Hi, friend, have a cookie." Now we see, boys and girls, Brian is an amazing artist. Now that is something that could really make him stand out, I think. On Monday morning, Mrs. Carlotti introduces Justin, a new student, to the class. Brian smiles shyly at him. Some of the other kids sneak looks at Justin, trying to figure out if he's cool enough to be their friend. They haven't quite made up their mind yet. At lunch, Madison and JT watched Justin eat with chopsticks. "What's that?" Madison said as she points to Justin's food. "It's bulgogi." What?" "Bulgogi. It's Korean barbecue beef. My grandma made it for me. It's really good. Do you want to try some?" "Ew, there's no way I'd eat bulgogi." And the kids laugh. All of them, that is, except Brian. He sits there wondering which is worse, being laughed at or feeling invisible. All right, so we see this new kid. He's being kind of picked on because he's eating a different kind of food. He's eating bulgogi, which is a Korean beef dish, and he's eating with chopsticks. And the kids are kind of making fun of him. The next day, when Justin goes to his cubby to put away his backpack, he notices a piece of paper with his name on it. Justin, I thought the bulgogi looked great. Brian, yum. And we see Brian drew a nice picture of himself eating food similar to Justin's. At morning recess, Brian finds a piece of chalk on the ground and starts drawing right away. And here Justin says, "You're Brian, right?" "Yeah. Thanks for the note." "Hey, Justin," Emilio calls out from the tetherball court. "You're next." "Sorry, gotta go," says Brian. "By the way, I think that's a really cool drawing," he adds before taking off. Back in class, Mrs. Carlotti asked the kids to team up in 2s or 3s for a special project. The kids scurry around the room to pair off. Brian heads towards Justin. "I'm already with Justin," says Emilio. "Find someone else." Brian looks at the floor, wishing he could draw a hole right there to swallow him up. Then Justin says, "Mrs. Carlotti said we can have up to 3 people in our group. We're only 2. Come on, Emilio, let's let him work with us." And Emilio says, "Okay, I guess." Mrs. Carlotti gives the class directions for the project. Your assignment is to work together to write a story about what you see in that photograph. Use your imagination and have fun. "Whoa, cool," says Emilio. "What kind of people do you think would live in houses like that?" "I don't know, but I bet Brian could draw them to go with our story," says Justin. Brian smiles as he takes out his lucky pen. And here we see the boys are working together on their project. They're drawing and doing the art together. And here we see they wrote like a little skit, and it says, "The crooked story we made up on the spot." And we see the boys work together to create their project. It's lunchtime again, Brian's least favorite part of the day. Another 20 long minutes of kids talking and laughing with everyone else but him. "Brian!" he hears someone shout. "Hey, Brian, over here!" Brian turns and sees Justin waving him over. Emilio nods at Brian and he makes room for him at the table. "Cookie," says Justin. "Thanks," says Brian. Maybe, just maybe, Brian's not so invisible after all. All right, and at the very end, there's some questions for discussion. But basically, guys, I hope that you learned from this really beautiful story that we should really pay attention to everyone, okay? And if there's someone maybe in your class that's a little quiet, a little shy, go up to them and talk to them. You might find that they are a fascinating person who might want to be someone you want to be friends with, okay? And I don't think anyone wants to feel like how Brian did at the beginning of this story. So let's try to remember that when we're out playing or even in free time in class. Just, let's keep an eye on everyone and let's not make anyone feel like they're invisible. All right, friends, have a wonderful, wonderful week.